Thank you very much, and welcome to EWTN Live. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and we've got a great show for you tonight. But before we get to our main guest, I want to get a quick update for EWTN on some special events coming your way this month. To tell us more about it, please welcome EWTN's Vice President for Programming and Production, Mr. Peter Gagnon. Peter, welcome. What do you got for us today?
Thanks for having me back on again here.
Sure.
Actually, we got some exciting events coming up. This weekend is the canonization of Pope Paul VI, Oscar Romero, and others. And so we're going to actually be in Rome live, doing live coverage of that. And we're actually going to do a special beforehand. So we'll have Brian Patrick, Matthew Bunson, and Father Raymond de Souza as the team there in Rome. And we're going to do a special highlighting not only them, but some of the other blesseds who are going to be canonized that a lot of people may not know about.
Sure.
Then we'll do live coverage of the canonization itself. Great. On Sunday. And then following that, the Synod for Youth has been going on this month, and we're going to actually present some special programs similar to what we did for the Synod on the Family, and kind of going in depth as to what's happening at the Synod, what's being discussed, and that'll be that same team, but it'll be a daily program for the next 2 weeks. Okay. After the canonization. So that'll be really inform the viewers as to what's happening at the Synod, so we can, shine light on that. And then finally is the events from Fatima that we do every October and every May. There's the procession in the evening, the night before, and then there's the Mass in Fatima. So it's always a beautiful event. We have a great relationship with the shrine in Fatima. In fact, we have different programming that we've done to highlight the apparitions there. So we want to kind of keep the message of Fatima alive and the hope that Our Lady brings with those events.
And especially at this time of crisis, it's a very important thing for us to join with the folks in Fatima praying.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a worldwide event where we can all pray all together as a worldwide Catholic family. Yeah. So those are some of the highlights. So people should go to our website, click on some of the banners for the canonization or our Synod coverage, as well as for our Fatima coverage, and find out all the times, the airs, the re-airs for the different areas in the world.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that update. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes with tonight's guest, so please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. And we are ready to give you the show with our guest, who is Dr. Jason Baxter, who is now a dean at Wyoming Catholic College. And he has done a wonderful book. I was blessed to be able to get a hold of it and read through it, on Dante's Divine Comedy. That it's a beginner's guide to Dante's Divine Comedy. And this book is a wonderful way to understand one of the most important pieces of literature in the Western world. Even though it's about 700 years old now, it still has great relevance today. So what we'd like to do is introduce Dr. Baxter so he can explain to you why. Dr. Baxter, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you. Good to have you. book is very nice, and it's something I think that's important. Pope Francis, a few years ago, encouraged everybody to read the Divine Comedy.
He did.
And it's something I was able to find a bilingual copy and start going through it because it's a poem. And that's one of the difficulties of poetry, is that it's not easy to translate the rhyme and the rhythm from one language to another. And yet with Dante, even with the English translations, there still is this great vitality to it.
Yes.
What we want to find out from you is why, besides the Pope recommending it, why should we read this book?
Yeah.
What's so good about it?
It's an extraordinary text. I mean, you'd think that something that's 700 years old would be dated, but it's not. It's still relevant. I think that's why the Pope recommended it, and the Year of Mercy is preparation for it. He said that reading Dante can help us discover the transcendent dimensions of being human beings. I think the text is so powerful because it's so sincere and it's so authentic. Mm-hmm. Dante doesn't just write a story about a pilgrim who goes into the afterlife. That's an interesting enough story. But he writes himself into the story. So he tells it in the first person. He writes it as if he were seeing it. And so we see a character who goes through the afterlife, who meets his heroes, who meets his father figures, who meets his enemies, who meets his friends, who meets the people he didn't think would make it, his old drinking buddies who somehow, some way made it in.
And he met a few people from inside the church who didn't make it at all. They ended up in hell.
Yes, and
he had at least one pope down there.
Yeah.
So and the number of bishops, and he saw that everybody has to go through the same judgment.
Yes. Yeah, and he put people down there who were fairly certain that they wouldn't be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, most of them think they won't go.
That's right.
After hearing confessions a long time, I can assure you. The thing is, so folks understand, the Divine Comedy, how funny is it?
It's not so funny.
No, it's not a funny book.
It's not very accurately named in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not comedy in our understanding of a lot of jokes and some slapstick humor and all. That's not what it means. What is he talking about, a divine comedy?
Yeah, now you've explained to me my students' disappointment when they get to the book. I think, well, he probably means two things by comedy. He probably means that on the one level, you know how comedies almost are these impossible situations that can't seem to ever work out properly. And in the end, somehow, magically, it all fits together and everyone ends in a happy ending.
Right.
So that's at least one aspect of the comedy, right? Here's this poor pilgrim lost in a spiritual wasteland in which the sensible presence of God has receded again from his life. And although he seemingly is still doing the right things, he doesn't have the kind of deep drive and inspiration that he did. This somehow, by the end of the story, works out, and he achieves a vision of the oceanic goodness of God. In that sense, it's comedic.
Yeah, and there's a famous quote when I believe it was Pope Leo XIII died. His last words were, "La commedia è finita." The comedy is over, is the way they translate it. And some anti-Catholics picked that up and said, see, he thought the whole thing was a joke. It was all a comedy. It's nothing at all. But that's not what it means. It means the difficulties have come to their happy conclusion. That's what comedies are in Latin and Greek.
Well, and then in Paradiso, there are opportunities where the pilgrim as he sort of ascends up these starry spheres, to turn around, and Beatrice says, "Look at all the planets I've put at your feet." And Dante sort of looks down at this crystal floor and sees the whole world, and he laughs at the earth. He smiles, and he says, "That's the place that makes our passions run so fierce." Mm-hmm. And it's a moment in which he's remembering an ancient text, The Dream of Scipio by Cicero. But in that sense, I suppose, it's also comedic, in the sense that if you could get enough distance from your daily concerns, your daily passions, your daily avaricious and lustful and prideful temptations, you'd be able to smile and laugh at it. So I guess in that sense, the comedy is finished.
Yeah, that's one of the things about him. He's trying to give perspective on this life. And he puts it, the three parts of the comedy. Go through just briefly what those three parts are.
Yeah. Well, the work is divided into these 100 little, they're called canti. They're little chapters of about 150 verses. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to read each one.
Yep.
And there are 100 of them. And then those 100 are divided into a block of 34, which is Dante's journey through hell, or the Inferno. And then another 33, Dante's journey up a large mountain where we think of Antarctica, climbing sort of terrace by terrace, which for him is his concrete imagination of Mount Purgatory. And then when he's purified at the top of Purgatory, he has this kind of fun, almost kind of sci-fi experiment, which his body begins to float up into the heavens and goes to the moon and Mercury and Venus and sort of floats up and meets different saints who are associated with, in the medieval imagination, what those virtues and powers those planets were associated with.
So he starts off with the Inferno, and I think it's a kind of sad. I understand why, but it's kind of sad that most college professors only ask their students to read the Inferno, which is about hell and the people in hell. Now, there are a lot of people who think that the people in hell are more interesting. You know, they like their sins.
They're probably more interesting to us, yes.
Yeah, but you know, that's not the place to stop. And with hell, he talks about that as a descent, and that there are different circles of hell. What does he mean by the circles of hell?
Yeah, so Dante has this extraordinary architecture. If you read other medieval visionary treatises, they all sort of lump all the sinners together, and they all get the same punishment. And they're very scary, these visionary treatises, and they're meant to be.
Well, yeah, like Hieronymus Bosch made these paintings of hell.
They're terrifying.
They're meant to terrify you.
Yeah. Dante, I think, does have the power and the terror and the fear. That is one of his goals. But he has lots of other goals as well. And one of his goals, I mean, he's a great moral theologian. And so he shapes an architecture of a big inverted funnel with individual layers so that he can come up with a schema for sort of sorting them all out. And for Dante, it comes a little bit as a surprise. There's a deep hell, which there's a big gate guarding it, and above that are the incontinent sinners. Right? Dorothy
What
Sayers,
does that mean by incontinent?
Dorothy Sayers, in a wonderful essay called The Other Six Deadly Sins, because we all know one of them, said that she divided them into hot sins and cold sins. And the hot sins are those of avarice and lust and
avarice, people don't even talk much about avarice. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, Dante has some really interesting ideas on that. It's that gnawing, restless hunger, which even when you achieve something good, you're immediately thinking about the next good thing you want.
You're always wanting to get more of stuff.
Yeah.
And oftentimes stuff you cannot possibly use.
Right.
You just want it to say because it's mine.
Right. I mean, it could be possessions, but it could be other things too. It could be honor. It could be lots of things. It's that horizon you told yourself you would be happy when you reached it, and when you get there, you're not. Yeah. Dante thinks that's basically a kind of a spiritual cancer. One of the 7 spiritual cancers they call in the Middle Ages the 7 deadly sins, which leads to all kinds of ill choices. So the incontinent sinners are outside the gates of deep hell. But within deep hell, Dante then puts those who were willing to harm the human community to get what they want. Not just you made a mistake and acted in a temper or a passion, but you set out to harm human beings. And what comes as a surprise is that Dante thinks that those who use force or violence are actually are higher up in hell, therefore less punished, than those who use the intellect, those who use fraudulence or who commit sins of betrayal. For Dante, using the intellect to harm the human community is more wicked. So to our surprise, Dante puts his white-collar criminals and the worst parts of prison.
Right. We oftentimes think that people who are, well, this is America. You've got a right to your own thoughts. And so whatever you think is fine. You know, you got freedom of thought. Well, you do have freedom of thought. The problem is some thoughts are evil. So we've seen in our country thoughts about making sure that certain races are treated as inferior and keeping them that way. We saw the thoughts of nationalism that the Nazis used, or thoughts of communism that the communists used to kill off people, and that's harming society, to take their stuff and then take their lives.
Yeah.
Those are very evil sins.
Yeah, I think Dante feels that as human beings, the medievals would have said what distinguishes us from the animals is that we're rational. I think Dante goes one step further, and he says that we're image users. We use words to build pictures of the world. And we have a sacred obligation to each other, not just to say things which are true, but to say things which are true in a beautiful way. And those who give false images of the world do irreparable harm to those around them. They steal joy from them. They steal vitality. They steal peace. Mm-hmm. And thus, as a poet, Dante feels a sacred obligation to use his language and his images in a way to build up the cosmos in a way which is profound and beautiful.
Well, I think of another example in our own culture. Those people who want to encourage euthanasia by calling it mercy killing. They portray the murder of an innocent person as merciful. That's using the mind to distort reality and harm human beings.
Yeah, Dante could easily be updated, but to my students' surprise often, in that one of the first pits they meet in the deepest part of hell is where the flatterers are. And as an absolute disgusting punishment, Dante imagines all these flatterers down in a cesspit of human sewage.
It's never good.
No. And you think it comes as a surprise that Dante thinks that to murder someone, in some sense, is a less grave action, or at least the habit of, say, murder is a less grave action than constantly, being the sort of manipulative PR person who's constantly cheating and changing words. It comes as a great surprise, but such was Dante's dedication to the sacred aspect of human speech.
So the people who schmooze for a living will end up in a hell that's a permanent porta potty. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, you better be careful, right? Yeah, you better be careful.
No schmoozing you.
Yeah.
So that's just, and one of the points you make in your book is that the Inferno is introspective. This is he's calling us as readers to look inside our own, examine our consciences in another way. That's not what you put it, but it's something along the lines of examining yourself, because I don't want to be in a permanent porta potty.
Right. Yeah. So there definitely is that aspect of fear. I think Dante's brilliance, again, if you read him alongside a medieval visionary treatise, is that going through this journey in the afterlife, the pilgrim has to develop a whole symphony of virtues. Sometimes he's asked to show sympathy and compassion. Sometimes he shows too much, and he gets berated by his guide Virgil. Sometimes he's actually expected to show wrath, because you can sin by not being angry enough at certain things, but not too much wrath, and not wrath for the wrong reasons. And so it's a really an amazing journey, as the pilgrim has to put all these different sort of pieces of the moral life together. I think, as human beings, we're dealt a single hand, aren't we? We get certain virtues and certain vices which come easily to us. But as we try to pursue the Christian life, we have to complete that hand and build up all these other kinds of virtues. I think that's one of the most interesting things that happens in the Inferno, is that the pilgrim has to not only get all these different properties and virtues, but he has to get them to the right and moderate measure.
Now, because I want to make sure we cover some of this in the Purgatorio, because after he goes down to hell, and he portrays hell, the deepest layers of hell, as cold.
Yes.
That Satan is frozen.
That's right.
In the bottom. But then in Purgatory, he's climbing up a mountain. And it's this journey that's hard.
Yes.
But it's a journey that is filled with hope.
Yes.
So there's suffering.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's hope in the suffering.
Right.
What's going on in his Purgatory?
Yeah, well, there's also two miracles happen in Purgatory. The first miracle is people there say the following statement, which you never hear on earth: "That was my fault." Purgatory is a place of freedom, and it's where you have to own your mistakes. You have to say, "That was my fault." Right. And Dante meets a character. I always kind of imagine him as a kind of an old school kind of Clint Eastwood kind of character in the middle of purgatory, Marco Lombardo, and he says, "Whatever happened to Italy?" You know, a question we might ask similarly. Whatever happened to America? Yeah. And Marco Lombardo says, "This is your fault." Repeat after me. "This is your fault," right? And so purgatory begins with me owning my freedom. That's the first miracle. The second miracle.
By owning your freedom, I think it's important to make clear that our freedom gives us permission to take responsibility. It's not freedom to do whatever I want, but exercising my free will means I accept responsibility for my behavior. So I stop blaming my parents,
That's right.
my economics, society,
That's right.
the media, anything. I take my full responsibility.
Right. And Dante portrays the poor damned sinners when they're waiting on the banks to be ferried across into hell as going through a litany of whose fault it was. He says they blame their parents. They blame the moment of their conception. They blame everything, but without accepting any responsibility.
Whereas in purgatory, they do accept responsibility and they start making progress forward toward virtue.
That's right. And the second amazing thing that happens is that the human community is knit back together. One of the most interesting things you discover at the base of hell is that there are sinners, Dante depicts, who don't want to share their names or identities. And the top of hell, the sinners still want to be remembered for the good things that they did. They don't want their name to die, and they still want a little bit of honor. They want to be, now granted, they always craft their story so that it's always about the good things. But as you get further into the center of Dante's cold universe, the thermostat keeps dropping, and these sinners don't even want to reveal their names. They've so radically served themselves, so ripped themselves out of the human community that they don't want to partake of it, even by proxy. That you see beginning to be knit back together in purgatory, where oftentimes, say, among the envious, Dante has a pretty graphic image because they use their eyes to be covetous of their neighbor's possessions and goods and wealth and honor. Their eyes are sewn shut and they cry. And in their sort of, their blindness, they have to lean on each other's shoulders, such that the individual I once envied now is actually the person who's supporting me. Now I have love for the individual who's not letting me collapse. And in this sort of beautiful way, Dante shows how individualistic people like us are slowly knit back together in a loving human community.
Yeah, yeah. And it's different sins have a different process of healing.
That's
it's
right.
not all the same punishment. It's
right.
for different kinds of faults that there's different kind of undoing of the fault. That's one of the purposes of purgatory, to undo it.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not one size punishment fits all. It's distinct for each group.
Yeah, you sort of get a personal trainer when you enter purgatory, and he gives you a set of spiritual exercises just for your body type and goals. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
You're modernizing it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And then finally, you already mentioned somewhat of the paradiso. Paradise is heaven.
Yes.
And this is something where he again gets incredible perspective. The people, that's one of the things about the characters of paradise. They have perspective on themselves. Some of the saints, for instance, who made inadvertent theological errors. They weren't trying to teach errors. They just made some theological mistakes. They're laughing at themselves.
Comedy.
That perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Paradise. It's the hardest of the three books to read, and a lot of people can appreciate Inferno, and a lot of people can appreciate Purgatorio, but Paradiso is difficult. In fact, there was a Slate article a couple years ago entitled, "Why doesn't anyone read Dante's Paradiso?" But I think what Dante's doing there is something quite extraordinary. It's seemingly, one of my beloved professors has written about this, but seemingly Dante knew 1 John, probably had it memorized. Yeah. And from that he learned that God is invisible and that God is love. So Dante adds one more little interesting thing to it, that God becomes visible by means of the love of a human community. Dante will get to see God eventually in the very end in Paradiso 33. But in order to prepare the vision, he has to engage in the loving acts of a human community. And that's kind of, I think he might have got it from Augustine as well, but it's a very beautiful and a very bold claim that the human community, the church in particular, has the privilege of a sort of continued incarnation of God's love to the extent that we love each other well. I think that's one of the exciting lessons of Paradiso, which even if it's less dramatic, the potential for it to transform your theological outlook is tremendous.
Now, if somebody wants to read this great piece of literature, how do you recommend that they go about it? What would be, some must pick it up on their own.
Yeah.
Getting your book would be a help. It really would. Just to see the structure and where things are going.
Right.
So you're not aimlessly there. You're like Dante. You're a guide through this journey.
Kind of you to say, thanks.
Yeah. But what else ought people to do to read this?
Well, you could enroll in Wyoming Catholic College.
I thought it was bad enough that you're handling your book. Now the whole college.
I think I love what Rod Dreher said a couple years ago. He wrote a book called How Dante Can Save Your Life, in which he described being in a kind of dark wood himself and stumbling across Dante's book and read, "In the middle of our life, I found myself in a dark wood, for the straight way was lost." And he thought, oh wow, this was personally written for me.
Yeah.
And he began to read it, and he wrote a book about that experience, and I found it quite moving a couple years ago. And he says in that book that people think about Dante as a sort of literary Mount Everest. Everyone knows it's there and admires it and kind of wishes to scale it, but is intimidated about the practical way of doing it. I suppose what I've always recommended is if you could get a group of friends together, like a lot of the original chapters of the book were read with friends, two friends who threatened to watch tonight. If you could get a group of friends together, preferably with wine and cheese, and read...
Catholics.
Yeah, that's right. I suppose you could do bread and water if you're reading Purgatorio. All right, fine, save the wine for Paradiso, okay. But in any case, if you get a group of friends together and maybe read aloud 3 or 4 or 5 Conti, and then have a conversation about it among friends, I think that would be the best way to go about it. I think it could be an interesting Lenten devotion, an opportunity to spend time with friends as well as encounter profound ideas.
Or at least do the Inferno during Lent and the Purgatorio and move toward Easter, because it does take place on Good Friday.
Yeah, it does.
And then on Easter and the Easter week. So, that fits his mentality. But you don't have to wait until the penitential season. You can start now. And it's well worth. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back in just a couple of minutes. So please stay with us, all of you, and we'll get to your questions and your comments. Thank you. Welcome back. First of all, Dr. Jason Baxter has been with us this evening, and you have the opportunity to sign up for his free, count them folks, free distance learning course. It is entitled Dante in the Year of Mercy. You can do that through Wyoming Catholic College, which is in Wyoming, beautiful state. Love that place. You can find it on the internet by going to wyomingcatholic.org, and you can search Center for Distance Learning. So it's wyomingcatholic.org, and then search for Center for Distance Learning. And you get a free course in Dante from Dr. Baxter going through this. And you can do it without going all the way to Wyoming. It gets a little chilly there in the winter. So they're already getting snow up that way.
It's true.
So, so it's definitely want to have you do it. Are you ready for some questions?
I'm ready for some questions.
I start off with Marianne. Marianne, where are you calling from?
Hi, Father Pacwa. How are you? It's Marianne from New York.
Oh, good to hear from you. And your question?
My question is for Dr. Baxter and yourself as well, of course. I have read the Divine Comedy, the Alan Mandelbaum translation. I don't know if that's still the most trusted translation, but that's the translation that I have always read. Would hope for your opinion on that. However, my question is, how much of Dante is allegorical / deterministic? Because it seems that the souls, whether they be in Inferno, Paradiso, Purgatorio, it's determined because it seems to negate the mercy of God. And I recently was at Mass, and one of my lovely priests had said that there is no sin so great that the mercy of God can't forgive, that the mercy of God is limitless. And I'm just curious to know how much is allegorical, was Dante deterministic, or is the mercy of God truly boundless, which I would like to believe. Thank you so much. God bless you both.
All right, thanks. What you got?
I think Dante's really good on this. Marianne, if you remember in those moments in Purgatorio, one of my favorite passages is which Dante comes across one of his old lazy buddies, Belacqua, who's sort of lounging in the shade. And he says to him, what's the point of climbing up? Because the rule of the place is, if you were a late repentant in life, you have to wait as many years as you put off your repentance in the outside of the gates of purgatory before you're allowed to get in and even start doing your spiritual exercises. Seemingly, Dante thinks that sort of sitting there, if anyone's excessively punctual, like I am, and he's sitting there waiting for someone to show up, you get more and more nervous, and Dante thinks that over the course of 35 years, this will build up your desire, and you'll think, all right, finally, I'll take this seriously. Yeah. Anyway, so Belacqua's there, he knows the rules, and he doesn't proceed. Well, a couple canti later, Dante comes up to the gates of purgatory, and the angel reveals something interesting to him. He said, I've been entrusted by Peter to guard this gate, but he told me always to err on the side of mercy. And anyone who actually comes up here and says, I'm not worthy of it, but would you let me in? It's my policy to let him in. Mm-hmm. So Belacqua basically had precisely this kind of fatalistic and deterministic vision, right? He's sitting around waiting. If he had ventured, if he had been bold upon the mercy of God, he could have got in early, 35 years early. It's kind of the best kept secret of purgatory. I suppose we should all keep it in mind. But I mean, my joke is that in purgatory, if you ask for a drop of mercy, you get a bucket dumped on you. So I feel mercy is everywhere in purgatory. On the other hand, Dante definitely believes that we have freedom and we can even reject God's mercy. He believes that we can become so in love with ourselves or so in love with one object, so obsessed and fixed on one thing, one person, one pleasure, that we would rather have it to the exclusion of everything else. Mm-hmm. And Dante does believe that you have to give that up in order to love the God who made it. Mm-hmm. And it's a terrifying vision, but Dante's hell is full of people who love one thing to the exclusion of everything else, and in a weird way, they're kind of given it precisely because they would prefer that thing in hell to seeing God.
Yeah, and that it's not unlike Milton with his famous line, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Mm. You know, that I've got to be in charge. And if it means that the hell is the only place where I can be in charge, then I'll go there. But that's the mentality of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've seen some of that, too. Think about how angry people have become very recently. And the screaming and all the stuff that they make themselves miserable. They look to me as being at the beginning of their own hell. You know, in a lot of ways, it's tragic to me. Hopefully they'll give that up. Sir, where are you from?
Holy Cross in Batavia, Illinois.
Great. And your question?
As we're constantly being subjected by some to a message of social justice implying enormous taxes, government bureaucracy which breaks up families, doesn't get people employed, ends up on long-term welfare recipients and this sort of thing. When you compare it to the idea of Purgatorio with Dante, where people are developing social relationships more or less by free association, and the Catholic doctrine is of subsidiarity. In other words, all this charity and so on should be done at the lowest level, person to person, household to household, neighborhood to neighborhood. And yet we're constantly being sold this social justice message. Is that a conflict with church doctrine and Dante?
Yeah, I'm afraid. I think Dante's politics probably wouldn't satisfy you. I mean, he's a solid monarchist, and in fact, he calls for a renewal of the Roman Empire. It's a very sort of strange, a very medieval thought. But I think to the extent that Dante calls for a human community of individuals who are excellent at what they do and who love one another in charity, I think that probably could fit in with some of the things you're calling for.
Yeah, I think overall, you know, the Catholic Church doesn't commit itself for or against most political forms. You know, that's up to a lot of folks, like, for instance, monarchy, democracy, the variety of forms, and how they take specific shape. It's going to be the kind of action that you take in working toward those goals. That rather, you wouldn't say that social justice is an evil. Justice is something owed
Absolutely,
to everybody.
Yeah.
And some of this it just depends on what you mean by some of the social justice.
Yeah.
And this is, again, where I think we're in a crisis right now. Some folks will do whatever it takes to get what they want, and I don't care if it's legal or illegal. I don't care how many people it hurts. I got to get this because it's right. Well, slow down, because it does matter how you get something. I think that's part of what's behind a lot of the anger. The end does not justify the means. You have to use good means for good ends all the way along.
And Dante certainly believes that it's a vision of truth in love, which has to precede working out the vision of truth and love in justice.
Yeah. Let's take another caller. Hello, Michael. Where are you calling from?
Southern California.
Great.
China Lake.
What's that?
China Lake, the Navy base out there.
Oh, great. Wonderful. And
I think I've talked to you
thanks for your
about that
service.
before.
What's your question?
Yeah, what year was this Dante's comedy written? And then when they were in hell, you said there are certain levels of hell. I was just wondering how many levels there are and what they're called, and then that's about it.
Okay, good enough, Michael. Yeah. And I think also, I seen a note that he wanted to understand, is Dante just making this all up? Is this some sort of vision? How do you know the different levels of hell?
Right. Well, Mike, I'd encourage you to get a hold of a good edition. If you get a copy of Anthony Eslin's translation, I also like Robert Hollander's. There are great maps and have all these different places labeled and identified. I think you probably enjoy studying that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, did Dante make it up? I like to think that Dante is the poet of incarnation, that he takes abstract systems of moral philosophical thought, which had been around since antiquity, since Aristotle and Cicero, and then thought through all over again in the great age of the universities, particularly Aquinas. Dante takes this whole sort of system of thought, but it's the sort of thing that you might be asked to memorize as a schoolboy, right? Just sort of rote memory. How many categories of sin are there, right? What are the different categories of moral philosophy and so forth? Dante's genius is not so much his originality in the labels of these places, but how he constructs a sensible and sensuous place that represents this age-old moral philosophy.
Well, like we were talking about avarice,
Right.
the sin of as one of the capital sins,
Right.
and lust. Most of us have a sense of this is advertised all over the place.
Right.
But some sins, indolence, we don't see that talked about. There's plenty of it around.
Right, yeah.
But he gives a picture.
Correct.
And
That's
he again, as you said, he sees the importance of how much of your intellect, that which makes you
Correct.
specifically human.
That's
How
right.
much of that intellect goes into coming up with your sins? How much is just reacting to your body?
Right.
Gluttons, they're just hungry. They just want to eat all the time.
It's wrong, because they ought to exercise the rational powers over those appetites. But it's less grave.
Right.
Yeah. So to answer really quickly, the upper part of hell, the uppermost circles are where the incontinent are. Then there's a big gate which is guarded by all kinds of fearful demons, and including Medusa. That's an interesting scene that Dante has to get through. When he enters into deep hell, interestingly enough, a place where none of the ancient heroes ever went, according to their stories. They always went and then had to go back up. But the Christian poet has to go all the way down to the depths, has to sort of dredge all that stuff, from the depths of the heart. Then Dante goes and encounters those who committed sins of force, violence, against themselves, against others, against their neighbor's property, or even against their own property. Then come the sins of the intellect, which are then further subdivided, sounds like a scholastic theologian, into fraudulence and betrayal. Basically committing fraudulence against those who had a right to expect something of you. So that's in general, that's a quick layout of the architecture of Dante's concrete imagination of the Inferno.
Right. Okay. So he's not just making it up. There really is a plan that fits the understanding of morality, such as Thomas Aquinas.
The
who's
intellectual
drawing on
architecture,
others. Yeah,
exactly. He inherited the intellectual architecture from antiquity and medieval theologians in the century before. And then he cobbled together every image he could possibly get. But that's why it's such a strikingly, I think, powerful work. Dante's contribution, again, is that sensible. If you could think about abstract ideas becoming almost sort of incarnate flesh and blood so that they have a capacity to move us, that's Dante's contribution.
Yeah. Father, where are you from?
Vermilion, Ohio, Diocese of Toledo.
Great, good to have you here.
Thank you for being here.
And what is your question?
We live in a instant gratification, fast food society, me first. How can Dante's work help us to understand the journey of life that we're on? What can we glean not only from this work, but something that's going to help us each and every day to live life to the fullest?
Well, there's something, about that, here we deserve a break today. We can go and get something real quickly. It may not be all that good for us, but it's got enough sugar, fat, and salt to make us like it, right? And so this is where we are. How does Dante help us to overcome that quality of our culture?
Well, I think, maybe most obviously, he points out along with medieval theologians and classical philosophers, that we have to discipline our passions. But maybe you could say that Dante is both the character and the poet, has a kind of epic quality. You remember, if you've ever read the beautiful sermon by C.S. Lewis, The Weight of Glory, Lewis attributes a lot of our deficiencies to the fact that we don't have a big enough vision. We don't have a vision of beauty and love of God. which could make our ordinary temptations seem small. I think that's probably Dante's best, best solution. Is that if we could get a brief vision of holiness, right? Lewis once said about his friend Tolkien that he wrote a story which cut like swords and burned like fire. I think I'd like to apply that to the comedy, to give a vision of goodness, a vision of holiness, a vision of virtue, right? To have a sense in the soul of desire, to long to soar. I think having that positive vision aids us in the ordinary struggle of trying to put off the negative temptations. But it's also interesting that Dante actually likes to use the metaphor of fasting for his own writing. He says that he fasted and grew thin while writing the comedy. I guess as opposed to, again, the instant gratification of certain kinds of foods, right? Dante said, look, you need and maybe that's a good Dominican place to begin. The Dominicans, said that first the bow is bent in study. That is, do you want to have a profound prayer life? Do you want to be full of charity? Well, we should be disciplining our minds and reading rich and healthy and nourishing things, which will fill us with good desires, which will fill us with lofty ambitions, maybe even epic ambitions. So I suppose Dante probably could say a lot of interesting things to us, but I think he would say first of us, one, train your mind, eat rich and nourishing things, then you'll have lofty ambitions of the purest spiritual type. And then two, then you'll be more capable of controlling the passions that we deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah. I think that's an important perspective, that we need to understand God in order to, or at least have, not understand that we can comprehend all of God, but we need to get that sense of God, that vision of his beauty and truth and goodness, and be committed to him, to have any kind of perspective on ourselves.
That's right.
Something I've noticed over the years is that people who had religious training to which they were committed, they may have lost their faith, but at one point they had religious training, they make better comedians because they have better perspective. That's the key thing about humor. You have perspective on yourself. It's one of the reasons I think so many of the old comedians were Jewish. They had a religious perspective and training. And then you see today a lot of our Hispanic and African American also coming from an experience of church, where they had a sense of perspective. They may have lost some of it, but it gave them perspective. And we also need to have a comedic perspective from God's view on ourselves to see how small we are.
Well, I'll take your word on it. I don't know too much about funny comedians.
There aren't that many. The atheists aren't funny. Atheists cannot laugh at themselves. And one of the things, too, people who are mentally disturbed cannot laugh at themselves. That's a thumbnail way to figure out if somebody has a mental disorder or not. They can laugh at themselves. Laughing at other people doesn't count. Laughing at yourself.
I'm okay then, okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Deacon Mike from the Toledo Diocese. And I was wondering, since I'm a retired teacher and principal in that diocese, might you explain to us a little bit about how are the students receiving your word? What's their reception? And can that give us a little bit of hope for our future?
Yes. I think there's lots of hope. That doesn't mean there's not lots of disappointment. But I think, at the school I get to teach at, I think I teach some of the best students in the country. I think you'd be really pleased. Well, I mean, one of the things we do is I give them reading quizzes over every single reading that they do, and I make them actually draw a whole map of all three of Dante's books, including hell, purgatory, and paradise, and they have to name the speakers in it. And I tell them, I think they appreciate it by the time they're done with it. But I tell them, look, if you have a map of this thing in your mind, it's going to serve as a reference for all kinds of future conversations. And so at the college, it's kind of beautiful. It's actually, the books become kind of a touchstone. It's become almost a kind of rite of passage for the students and a way to organize so many of their other philosophical and theological studies.
Yeah, so folks understand, we've done a couple shows in the past about Wyoming Catholic College. Great place. If I were an undergrad that's a place I'd like to go. For one thing, the main sport over there is horseback riding.
And rock climbing.
Yeah, and rock climbing.
Yeah.
So that's cool in itself.
Yes.
But there's a lot of this, because it's a small school.
Yes.
In a lot of your classes, the students are engaged with each other. They have to read the material and discuss it with each other. And it's not easy to get away with faking it.
No, we all know each other.
Yeah. You can't get away with looking at one of those little notebook kind of things that summarize it. Sometimes you make them memorize passages so that they can recite the whole passage by heart.
No, it's an extraordinary school. It's a bold experiment. But what we're trying to do is, just if you would say, drop a student, which they do, in the outdoors, and they have to navigate these sublimely beautiful landscapes of Wyoming, and they have to learn how to guide themselves, and they sort of write a map in their minds. We're hoping to create that as a paradigm for what happens in the classroom. It's not just sort of downloading information from my brain to yours, but it's students who are in some sense learning to navigate the inner landscape of the human heart. Mm-hmm. And thus for us, the memory is important and the discipline. So I think there's...
And that's where Dante comes in. With his map of heaven, hell, and purgatory, that the ultimate end of life, having that mapped out as a way to understand this life now.
Exactly.
This is not a small business.
Yeah.
When a lot of folks would like to forget about the ultimate questions of life, focus on what I'm getting right now, and go on to make myself ever more ignorant. I just want to mention your book again.
Thank you.
It's called A Beginner's Guide to Dante's Divine Comedy. It's by Jason Baxter. And you can get it from EWTNRC.com. It is book item 8734. It's very nice, very readable. Encourage folks to get a hold of that. Get a hold of that. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm afraid that we're running slap out of time, but hopefully that this will be a good start for people to go online for your course at wyomingcatholiccollege.org and to get your book.
I hope so. Thank you, Father.
Sure, and bless all of you. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you, lead you in all of his ways by his peace. Let's also pray for our brothers and sisters south of us going through Hurricane Michael. God would protect them as well. Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. And we can bring you great guests and go through these important topics because the network is brought to you by you. So keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill. Thank you.